The morning started like any other for Frank Thompson. He sipped his coffee and watched the sunrise from the observation deck of the Galactic Council's Earth Embassy. His scheduled return to Earth wasn't for another 3 months, but everything had changed overnight. "We need to leave now," said Lisa Garcia, entering the room with her bags already packed. Her face was pale, her normally confident posture now rigid with tension. "What happened?" Frank asked, setting down his cup. "Emergency council session. They voted. It's over, Frank. They're abandoning Earth." Frank stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. Within hours, they were on the last transport back to Earth. The council representatives from other worlds avoided eye contact as Frank and Lisa boarded. No goodbyes, no explanations. Their ship landed at the United Nations headquarters in New York 2 days later. World leaders had assembled, faces grim with anticipation. In the sealed chamber, Frank delivered the news that would change human history. "The Galactic Council has unanimously voted to terminate Earth's probationary membership," he announced, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent room. "All technological support, trade agreements, and diplomatic relations will cease effective immediately." The Chinese premier stood up first. "On what grounds?" Lisa stepped forward. "The official statement cites irreconcilable differences in evolutionary paths. We requested clarification, but were denied." The room erupted. Questions fired from all directions while Frank and Lisa stood at the podium, as confused and frightened as everyone else. "What does this mean for our orbital defense systems?" asked the American president. "Or our medical technology?" added the German chancellor. Frank raised his hands. "We don't know." The council provided no timeline for technological withdrawal. As the meeting continued, a junior aide slipped out of the room. Within minutes, his social media post went viral. "Breaking. Aliens abandoning Earth. Council pulls all support. Government hiding details." Market trading algorithms detected the spike in alarming keywords. By noon, stock markets worldwide began to plummet. By evening, they had collapsed completely. On the streets of major cities, the first signs of panic appeared. People lined up outside grocery stores, emptying shelves of essentials. Gas stations ran dry as citizens fled urban centers. Hospital emergency rooms filled with people demanding medication reserves. In Los Angeles, Greg Porter watched the news from his apartment window while helicopters circled overhead. Downtown, the first riots had broken out. He could see smoke rising from several locations. His phone buzzed with an emergency alert. "Remain calm. Government ADD or SSIing situation. Stay home. Avoid public gatherings." Greg laughed bitterly. "Remain calm." The aliens who had uplifted human technology for the past decade were abandoning them without explanation. The same aliens who had cured several forms of cancer, taught humans how to build atmospheric cleaners, and provided the energy technology that had ended fossil fuel dependence. On his television, amateur footage showed council buildings across the globe shutting down, their characteristic blue lights fading to darkness. Outside the London embassy, crowds gathered, some pleading, others throwing rocks at the now sealed doors. By nightfall, the president addressed the nation, promising that contingency plans existed, that humanity would adapt and overcome the setback. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her uncertainty. In their temporary quarters at the UN, Frank and Lisa reviewed the data packet given to them upon departure. The only explanation offered: a single phrase repeated in multiple alien languages. "Evolution cannot be contained. We will not be responsible for what follows." Neither of them understood what it meant. But as communications from council space went silent one by one, they realized humanity was truly alone again, and something about their species had frightened the most powerful coalition in the galaxy. 1 week after the announcement, Diane Carter sat at her control station in NASA's Deep Space Monitoring Division, watching helplessly as Earth's orbital defense system went dark. One by one, the satellites stopped responding, their status indicators shifting from green to red across her screen. "Command Center, please confirm status of Defense Grid Alpha," she said into her headset. "All systems unresponsive," came the reply. "We've lost everything from low Earth orbit to the lunar perimeter." Diane closed her eyes briefly. The defense grid had been a gift from the Council 5 years ago, supposedly impenetrable. Now it was dead metal floating in space. Across the globe, the systematic shutdown of Council technology continued. Hospitals watched in horror as advanced medical devices stopped working mid-procedure. Power grids dependent on alien energy converters failed, plunging entire cities into darkness. Communication networks fragmented as satellite links disappeared. William Jones stood in his empty office at the former Council liaison headquarters in Geneva. His alien counterparts had vanished without a word, leaving behind only locked doors and blank screens. For 7 years, he had worked alongside them, building what he thought was mutual respect. Now his security clearance was worthless, his alien friends unreachable. He tried one more time, activating the emergency communication channel. "This is Earth Liaison William Jones, requesting contact with Sector Coordinator Zinvala. Please respond." The silence that answered him was profound. At the Kennedy Space Center, a crowd of scientists and military personnel gathered around a massive display showing the solar system. Red dots indicated alien vessel movements. "They're really leaving," whispered Commander Paul Scott. "Every single one of them." The display showed hundreds of ships moving outward, beyond Mars, beyond Jupiter, accelerating toward the edges of the solar system. NASA's deep space telescopes captured the final images as the vessels activated their faster-than-light drives, disappearing in flashes of blue light. In suburbs and rural areas, the panic manifested differently than in cities. Gary Wilson stood in line at a hardware store in Nebraska, watching as people fought over generators, tools, and seeds. "My grandfather always said we'd regret depending on their technology," said the man behind him. "Time to go back to basics before we forget how." Gary nodded, clutching his own list. The electrical engineering textbooks he'd ordered wouldn't arrive. Shipping networks were breaking down, but he'd find other ways to learn. Everyone was suddenly interested in old technology, in how things worked before the aliens came. In Washington, D.C., Maria Collins faced a roomful of grim government officials. As head of the newly formed Global Technology Preservation Initiative, she had perhaps the most important job on the planet. "We have 3 priorities," she said firmly. "First, inventory all remaining functional Council tech. Second, prevent degradation where possible. Third, develop human alternatives before critical systems fail completely." An official from the Energy Department raised his hand. "The fusion plants are still running, but their maintenance systems are offline. We have maybe 2 months before they need manual intervention we don't understand." Maria nodded. "Then we have 2 months to figure it out." Outside her window, military vehicles patrolled the streets. Food riots had broken out in several states. The president had authorized emergency powers the previous night. In his basement laboratory, Dr. Aaron Lewis carefully dismantled a Council medical scanner. His son lay upstairs, dependent on alien technology to manage his rare genetic condition. The device in his hands represented his boy's future. "I'll figure this out," he muttered, methodically photographing each component. "They can't just leave us like this." But as night fell across a darkening planet, the reality became clearer. Earth hadn't just lost its place at the galactic table. It had lost the future it had been promised. And nobody knew why. John Murphy knew something wasn't right. After 15 years as security officer for the Council's North American division, he had developed a sixth sense for lies. And the official explanation for Earth's abandonment was the biggest lie he'd ever heard. The basement archives of the former Council headquarters in Denver were technically off-limits now, but his old access code still worked. He moved silently through the darkened corridors, his flashlight revealing rows of storage units containing physical records, the Council's strange insistence on backing up digital information with analog copies. "Evolutionary divergence, my ass," he muttered, pulling open a drawer labeled Species assessment. Confidential. The file he found made his blood run cold. Dated just 3 months before the abandonment, it classified Earth as potentially hazardous, with a threat assessment level of 9.7 out of 10, the highest rating he'd ever seen for any species. 2 days later, he sat across from Kate Brown in a small diner outside Boulder. The scientist looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights trying to keep her research facility functioning without council support. "I need someone who understands alien biology," John said quietly, sliding the copied file across the table. Kate glanced at it, then quickly tucked it into her bag. "Why me?" "Because your name appears in their surveillance list. They were watching you specifically." She paled. "What did I do?" "Maybe the same thing that scared them away from our entire planet." In her lab that night, Kate analyzed the genetic data in the file. The Council had been monitoring human DNA for decades, tracking subtle changes that were accelerating with each generation. "This can't be right," she whispered to John as she showed him her findings. "According to these markers, we're evolving toward what? Something they fear." A week later, John woke to the sound of his security system being disabled. He reached for his gun, but froze when he saw the figure standing in his bedroom doorway. It wasn't human. 7 feet tall with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. "John Murphy," the being said, its voice melodic despite the tension in it. "I am called the Observer by my kind. We don't have much time." The alien moved to the window, peering anxiously at the sky. "I risk everything coming here. The Council would execute me for contact with your species now." "Why?" John demanded. "What did we do?" "Nothing yet. Everything eventually." The Observer turned. "You weren't abandoned, John Murphy. You were quarantined." Across town, Kate was making her own discovery. Hidden in the genetic data was a projection model, a forecast of human development over the next 5 centuries. 300 years, she whispered, staring at the screen. The model showed human cognitive and physical capability surpassing every council race within that time frame, and continuing to advance beyond. The Observer showed John something even more disturbing: secret council meeting records. "They debated your extinction," the alien said flatly. "It was considered the safest option." "Then why not just kill us?" John asked. "Ethics Division opposed it. You haven't yet developed the capabilities that frighten them. Abandonment was the compromise. Withdraw all technology that might accelerate your development. Place monitoring stations at the edge of your system. And watch." "Watch for what?" "For signs that you're becoming what they fear." Later that night, John and Kate met in her lab's basement, away from potential monitoring. "The Council is built on stability," Kate explained, showing him the data. "Species that evolve very slowly, whose development takes thousands or millions of years. Humans are changing too fast. Our adaptability frightens them." John nodded slowly. "The Observer said some council members wanted to help us. Secretly. There's a faction that believes we should be allowed to develop naturally. Can we trust them? I don't know. But right now, they're the only allies we have out there." Kate looked at the genetic forecasts again. "What exactly does the Council think we're going to become?" John remembered the Observer's final words before disappearing. Something beyond their comprehension. Something they cannot control. 3 months after the Council's departure, John Murphy stood in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath Denver. What had once been a storage facility was now the headquarters of Project Phoenix. Around him, 40 people worked at salvaged equipment, a mix of human and alien technology cobbled together with determination and desperation. "The power coupling is failing again," Kate Brown called from her workstation. "We need another converter." John nodded. "I'll contact the Seattle cell tonight." What had begun as a 2-person investigation had grown into a global network. Small groups of scientists, engineers, and former council employees working in secret to preserve what knowledge and technology they could. The government knew about them, but looked the other way. Unofficial support for an unofficial mission. On the other side of the facility, Alan Howard hunched over a disassembled alien communication device. The former government scientist had joined Phoenix after his lab was shut down. "I think I've cracked their signal processing algorithm," he said as John approached. "It's not that different from quantum computing, just using different particles." "Can you rebuild it with Earth materials?" John asked. Alan smiled for the first time in weeks. "I already did." He pointed to a crude-looking device connected to the alien components. "It's not pretty, but it works. We're reverse engineering their tech, piece by piece." Across the globe, similar breakthroughs were happening in hidden facilities. A group in Nigeria had recreated a working medical scanner. Australian engineers had built a small-scale version of a council power cell. Each success was shared through encrypted channels, each failure analyzed for lessons. Not everyone supported their efforts. Council loyalists, humans who believed compliance might bring the aliens back, had formed their own groups. Twice now, Phoenix facilities had been attacked, their equipment destroyed by people shouting that humanity wasn't ready for these technologies. The government walked a careful line, officially discouraging unauthorized research, while quietly providing resources to Phoenix through back channels. No one knew if the council was still watching, and no one wanted to provoke them. In the Phoenix mess hall, John found Kate reviewing data from their global monitoring network. "Any unusual activity in orbit?" he asked. She shook her head. "Nothing since the defense grid shut down, but our coverage is limited." The observer had warned them about monitoring stations beyond the solar system, but Earth's remaining telescopes couldn't detect anything that far out. A young technician rushed into the room. "Dr. Howard wants everyone in the communications lab." Now, they found Alan standing before his hybrid communication device, his face flushed with excitement. "I was testing the range," he explained, pushing the signal farther out. "And I got something back." He played the recording. Strange harmonics filled the room, patterns that seemed almost musical that carried complex information. "Is it the council?" someone asked. Alan shook his head. "The signature is all wrong. This isn't council technology." "Then who?" John asked. "I don't know, but they responded to our signal, and they're coming closer." That night, John met with the leaders of the other Phoenix cells via a secure link. The mysterious signal had been detected by 3 other facilities, confirming it wasn't a malfunction. "We need to prepare for contact," said Olivia Chen from the Beijing cell. "But carefully. We don't know their intentions, or if the council knows about them," added Ricardo from Mexico City. John thought about what the observer had told him, that the galaxy was bigger and more complex than the council admitted, that other civilizations existed beyond their influence. "We continue as planned," he decided. "Build our knowledge, develop our technology. But now we have a new priority, securing a direct communication channel with whoever sent that signal." As the meeting ended, Kate pulled him aside. "There's something else," she said quietly. "The signal." Ellen didn't want to say this in front of everyone, but it contained Earth languages, multiple human languages. "That's impossible," John said. "No human has ever gone beyond our solar system." "I know," Kate replied. "So who out there speaks our languages? And how long have they been listening?" The Phoenix Communications Center buzzed with activity as technicians worked to decode the latest intercepted transmission. For weeks, they had been monitoring faint signals between what appeared to be automated council sentinels positioned around the solar system. "Got it," said Ryan Foster, their lead cryptographer. "It's a status report to some kind of command center beyond Neptune." John leaned over his shoulder. "What are they reporting?" "Routine surveillance. No unusual activity." Ryan paused, highlighting a section of code. "Wait. There's a reference to something called genetic baseline monitoring. They're scanning for deviations from some preset standard." Kate frowned. "They're watching for evolutionary changes, just like the observer warned us." The revelation confirmed their worst fears. Earth wasn't just abandoned. It was under constant surveillance. Any significant advancement might trigger a council response. In another section of the facility, Alan Howard and his daughter Olivia had been working on something even more disturbing. As a specialist in xenogenetics, Olivia had been analyzing the DNA samples collected from Phoenix volunteers. "Dad, you need to see this," she said, pointing to her screen. The lab around them was makeshift, assembled from salvaged equipment, but her findings were unmistakable. Alan studied the data, his expression darkening. "Are you sure?" "I've run it 20 times," she replied. "Every human sample shows the same pattern. These genetic markers aren't natural. They've been artificially modified." "Modified how?" "Restricted," she said simply. "Certain neural pathways, cellular regeneration capabilities, even cognitive processing. They've all been subtly capped." Alan sat heavily in his chair. "The Council didn't just find us. They engineered us." The evidence was undeniable. Historical DNA samples retrieved from ancient human remains showed different genetic patterns. Sometime in humanity's past, perhaps thousands of years ago, their DNA had been altered to limit their potential. When John and Kate joined them later, Olivia explained her theory. "It's like putting a governor on an engine," she said. "The basic design still works, but it prevents the machine from reaching its full power. Our bodies and minds are operating at maybe 60% of their natural capacity. Can it be reversed?" John asked. Olivia hesitated. "Theoretically. The modifications are sophisticated but not permanent. They're designed to replicate with each new generation. But if we could develop a targeted gene therapy—" "Do it," John said immediately. For the next month, Olivia and a small team worked tirelessly on what they called the unbinding process. The risks were enormous. Altering the human genome could lead to catastrophic health consequences if done incorrectly. But the potential benefits were equally profound. "I think we're ready for a human trial," Olivia announced one evening. "Who's the subject?" Kate asked. Olivia looked at her father. "Me," Alan said firmly. "I'm not asking anyone to take a risk I won't take myself." The procedure took place in their makeshift medical bay. Alan lay on the table as Olivia administered the gene therapy treatment, a customized virus designed to rewrite the artificial limitations in his DNA. For 3 days, he remained in isolation, his body racked with fever as the changes took hold. On the 4th morning, he opened his eyes. "How do you feel?" John asked from the observation window. Alan smiled slowly. "Different. Everything is clearer." The tests that followed confirmed what they had hoped. Alan's neural activity had increased by 40%. His cognitive processing, memory, and problem-solving abilities had all dramatically improved. Even his physical strength and stamina showed measurable gains. "It's working," Olivia reported to the Phoenix leadership. "The modifications are being reversed." But their victory was short-lived. 2 days later, their perimeter alarms triggered. The orbital monitoring stations had detected the change in Alan's genetic structure and sent an alert. "They know," Kate whispered, watching the incoming data. "The Council knows we've discovered what they did to us." John stared at the alert pattern. "Then we don't have much time. If one unbound human triggered this response, we need to move faster." Alan finished, his enhanced mind already calculating possibilities. "We need to unbind more of us before they return." "How many?" Kate asked. "As many as possible," John replied grimly. "Because when the Council comes back, it won't be to talk." 5 years after the Council's abandonment, the early warning system built by Project Phoenix detected the first signs of approaching vessels. Massive ships, unmistakably Council design, decelerated as they entered the solar system. 7 capital ships, at least 20 support vessels, reported Sam Wilson from the monitoring station beneath White Sands. "They're making no attempt to hide their approach." John Murphy, now gray at the temples, studied the tactical display. In the years since the discovery of the genetic modifications, Phoenix had grown from a resistance movement into humanity's unofficial defense force. Around the globe, hybrid weapon systems, human innovation built on salvaged alien tech, were powering up. "Alert all stations," he ordered. Defense Protocol Delta. What had once been abandoned council embassies now served as Phoenix command centers. The one in Rio de Janeiro housed Kate Brown and her strategy team. "They're slowing near Mars orbit," she noted, watching the incoming data. "Tactical formation suggests they're preparing for potential conflict." The Earth that awaited the Council's return was not the same one they had abandoned. Over 60% of the adult population had received some version of the unbinding treatment. The initial side effects, migraines, sensory overload, emotional volatility, had been overcome with refined techniques. Humanity was awakening to its true potential. In Washington, D.C., the President addressed an emergency session of the United Nations. "We will not surrender our sovereignty," she declared. "If the Council wishes to speak, we will listen. If they come to threaten, they will find us prepared." The first communication came 3 days after the fleet's arrival. A single message, broadcast globally on old Council frequencies. "Earth leadership will present themselves for evaluation. Compliance is mandatory." John traveled to the designated meeting point, the former Council headquarters in Geneva, with a small team including Kate and Olivia. The building, once abandoned, now hummed with power again as Council representatives reactivated its systems. 4 alien species waited for them in the central chamber. John recognized the tall, mantis-like Zitherans and the crystalline Mevodians. 2 others were unfamiliar, but all wore the formal insignia of the Council High Command. "You have violated the terms of your quarantine," stated the lead Zitheran without preamble. "Your species was left to develop naturally. Instead, you have deliberately altered your genetic structure." After discovering you had already altered it, John replied evenly, "We simply restored what was taken from us." The aliens exchanged glances. "Your claim is noted but irrelevant. The modifications were implemented 10,000 years ago to prevent humanity from developing dangerous capabilities." "Dangerous to whom?" Kate asked. "To galactic stability," responded a crystalline Mevodian. "Your species' cognitive potential, if fully expressed, would destabilize the power balance that has maintained peace for 50,000 years." The Council representatives presented their ultimatum. Earth could either accept re-implementation of the genetic restrictions or face species containment protocols, a euphemism for planetary blockade or worse. "We require your answer within 1 standard day," the Zitheran concluded. Back at their temporary headquarters, John met with Earth's leadership via secure channel. "They're scared," he explained. "Our progress in just 5 years has alarmed them. They never expected us to not only reverse engineer their technology but improve on it." "What are our options?" asked the President. Olivia stepped forward. "There's something they don't know yet." She took a deep breath. "The unbinding process. We didn't just distribute it through voluntary treatments." Silence fell across the communication channel. "What did you do?" John asked quietly. 3 years ago, we released an airborne variant into the atmosphere. It was designed to make subtle, gradual changes, too small for their monitoring to detect. Then we introduced a water-soluble catalyst 6 months ago." She looked around the room. "The process has already begun in approximately 70% of Earth's population, even those who never volunteered." The revelation stunned everyone. What Olivia and her team had done was either humanity's salvation or the trigger for its destruction. "You had no right," the Chinese premier said finally. "No single person did," Olivia acknowledged. "But Phoenix leadership collectively authorized it. We couldn't risk the Council returning and finding only a small percentage of humans unbound." When they returned to the Council chamber the next day, John carried this knowledge with him. The stakes had changed. There was no going back now. "We decline your terms," he told the waiting aliens. "Humanity will determine its own path forward." The Zitherans' compound eyes flickered, their version of surprise. "Then you choose elimination." "No," John replied calmly. "We choose freedom. And we suggest you consider very carefully what attacking a planet of increasingly unbound humans might cost you. The first Council attack came at dawn, orbital strikes targeting Phoenix facilities around the world. They expected to find a primitive defense system, easily overwhelmed by superior technology. They were wrong. 5 years of reverse engineering and innovation had produced something the Council never anticipated: adaptive shield technology that not only blocked their weapons, but absorbed and redirected their energy. "They're pulling back," Sam Wilson reported from the command center beneath Denver. On the main screen, Council vessels retreated to higher orbits, regrouping. John Murphy watched the tactical display with cautious optimism. "They'll try a different approach now. Be ready." The second attack targeted global communication systems, an attempt to isolate and divide Earth's defense network. But Phoenix had prepared for this too, activating a backup system that operated on principles the Council had never shared with humanity. Kate Brown coordinated the global response from a hardened bunker in the Rocky Mountains. Defense grid holding at 87% capacity, all regions still connected. What the Council forces couldn't understand was how quickly the unbound humans were adapting to their tactics. As the conflict entered its second day, something unprecedented began to happen. In Phoenix centers worldwide, humans with enhanced cognitive abilities began to interface directly with alien technology, their minds connecting to systems in ways even the original designers hadn't imagined. Olivia Howard stood in a circle of unbound technicians, their hands touching a salvaged Council navigation system. "We can see their command protocols," she said, her voice distant as her mind processed the alien data. "They're using standard combat patterns from the Mavodian conflict of 6,000 years ago." "Can we counter them?" John asked. Olivia opened her eyes, a slight smile forming. "We already have." When the Council launched their third attack wave, their vessels found themselves responding to phantom targets, their systems compromised by humans who had learned to speak directly to the machines. In orbit, Council commanders faced a startling reality. They were losing to a species they had dismissed as primitive just years before. The turning point came on the fourth day. A massive Council battleship positioned itself over North America, preparing for a devastating strike. Before it could fire, 3 smaller Earth vessels, hybrids of human and alien technology, surrounded it. Instead of attacking, they broadcast a single message: "We offer peace. We choose cooperation over conflict." The Council leadership, monitoring from their command ship, fell into disarray. Some demanded escalation, the deployment of weapons that would render Earth uninhabitable. Others urged caution, recognizing that if humans could achieve this much in 5 years, annihilation might only delay an inevitable reckoning. Into this chaos stepped the Observer, now revealed as a high-ranking member of the Council's Science Division. "We have misunderstood them from the beginning," the alien told the assembled commanders. "They seek not domination but self-determination." After 7 days of tense orbital standoff, a delegation from the Council requested a formal meeting. This time, they came not with ultimatums but with questions. "How did you advance so quickly?" asked the Zitharan commander, genuine curiosity in its voice. John exchanged glances with Kate before answering. "By working together, by combining perspectives and encouraging innovation rather than controlling it." The negotiations lasted months. The Council, divided on how to proceed, finally accepted a proposal from the Observer's faction. Earth would become a sovereign system, neither Council member nor subject. A buffer zone would be established, a boundary that both sides would respect. 1 year after the conflict ended, John stood on a viewing platform at the newly completed spaceport outside Phoenix, Arizona. Beside him, Kate and Olivia watched as Earth's first independently built starship prepared for launch. "Where will they go?" Kate asked, watching the massive vessel gleaming in the morning sun. "Wherever they choose," John replied. "That's the point." The ship, named Horizon, represented something neither John nor Kate had dared hope for during those dark days after abandonment, a future determined by humanity itself. As the countdown began, Olivia's enhanced mind sensed the collective anticipation of thousands of watchers. "This isn't an ending," she said quietly. "It's barely even a beginning." The engines ignited, bathing the launch pad in blue fire. As Horizon rose into the clear sky, John thought about the long journey that had brought them here, from abandoned cast-offs to architects of their own destiny. The Council thought they were containing a threat, he said as the ship disappeared into the upper atmosphere. Instead, they created exactly what they feared. Kate took his hand. "No. They freed us to become what we were always meant to be." In orbit, Horizon's captain sent back the mission's first transmission. "All systems nominal. Course set for deep space. Humanity is on its way." And across the stars, other civilizations began to take notice of the species that had defied the Council and won.